Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Financial Social Work monthly webinar. This is Rita Wolfson, and our guest speaker today is David Deschamps, and he has a great presentation for you. You're going to be so glad that you've joined us. It's called Empowering Clients Financially with a Growth Mindset. And David is a graduate of the Center for Financial Social Work, and that's how I learned about his work. And I think the reason that we get along so well is that some of our interests and work certainly overlap. So to begin, um, I will. You can see that David is very much about helping people hone the skills that they need to find and keep joy in their work and be more effective on and off the job. I don't think any of us can ask for any more than that. But before I turn webinar over to David, I want to tell you all a little bit about financial social work, because we know that when we have such a wonderful registration as we do for today, we have new people who don't know who we are, what we do, and why we bring these monthly free webinars. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the basics of financial social work and the fact that we so believe that financial health is about much more than dollars and cents. Actually, when it comes to money, it's complicated. It is definitely complicated. And this is an overview of just some of how my own work in financial social work and Femonomics has come to incorporate and identify and work around these many multiple components. So I call this the whole person financial health model. And so we come at it from a more holistic and positive perspective. We believe that the clients in our own relationship with money and with ourselves. That's where it all comes from. That's where it begins. And that's what drives financial behavior. And I consider financial behavior to be how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. I missed something there. Wanda, what time is earn, spend, save, share, borrow? It's the day after election, and I volunteered. I was a poll protector last night. So we will talk about that in a minute. I have another slide with financial behavior on it. And it's our financial behavior that determines our financial circumstances. And you can see my dancing arrow to show you that this is where sustainable long-term financial behavioral change happens. Again, talking about relationship with money and self. When it comes to self-respect, self-esteem, self-approval, self-acceptance, all real change begins with self-acceptance. So let's look at those 5 components of financial behavior: how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. And when it comes to that relationship with self, there are all of these emotional barriers, and we understand them, and we want to address them to help advance how our clients think about, interact, their attitudes, thoughts, and feelings about money. So financial social work is an ongoing, highly experiential behavioral model. It incorporates that ongoing piece of financial education, motivation, validation, and support, because we do know that's what people need to create a sustainable long-term financial change. It is very interactive, introspective, and strengths-based. It's practiced individually and or with groups, and many of our graduates practice financial therapy using financial social work. It The psychodynamic financial social work model includes transformational learning and the trans-theoretical model of behavioral change. Many of you are probably familiar with one or both of those, but they're an important part of financial social work. We also like to explain that dollars and cents don't make financial choices. It's not, the money does not jump out of our wallet or the credit card or any means of payment. We believe in the inner money self, that's where that relationship with self and money begins, because financial circumstances originate from within your inner money self. As the graphic shows, money's not the problem. It's our relationship with money that's the problem. So it is a psychosocial model, which is about the fact that your inner money self includes your thoughts, feelings, and actions with your money and with yourself. And at the end of the webinar, if you have some time, you might want to close your eyes and introduce yourself and picture your inner money self. Get to know your inner money self. So someone with a healthier money self engages more readily, is more hopeful, is more eager to change, is more prepared to succeed, and to achieve peace with your money, which is something that we wish for our students and graduates and their clients. So now, without further ado, as the saying goes, I am happy to introduce David to you and hope he'll tell you a little more about himself as I turn this over to him. Okay, I verify. You know, David, I need to make sure that this is the right listing for you. Do you have it now, David?
I have the listing. I also have it's something that we still have the Empower Clients Financially with Growth Mindset window. And behind that, I see the PowerPoint.
Yes, but do you have, did it ask you, did it say I'm turning it over to you?
No, I'm not seeing that aspect of it, no.
Okay, then I need to see. Okay. All right, yes.
Okay, there we go. Okay,
Okay.
so made a presenter, close. Oh, here we go. Very good. When ready, show my screen. All right, and we move from there. I think we're ready to go then, Rita.
Vonda, can you, okay, I see your screen. Good. Okay, thanks, David. Go ahead.
Okay, really? Okay, well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. As Rita mentioned, my name is Dave. I'm a trainer and consultant here at Best Care Employee Assistance Program. We are a full-service employee assistance program based out of Omaha, Nebraska. And I've had the pleasure of working here at Best Care for about the last 15 years or so, using what I've learned from my background in organizational psychology to help people, our clients, their managers and supervisors, their families, be just about as happy and successful as they are willing to work to be. And I've been very excited this last year or so to be able to expand some of my content knowledge into the area of financial well-being, because this is certainly something that we're finding with our clients, that more and more people are extremely concerned about their finances, and it's beginning to impact their productivity at work, but also their happiness at home. So I've taken the opportunity to become certified as a financial social work educator to be able to bring that knowledge to my clients. So let's dig in, and based on that, let's kind of dig in and talk about this. And again, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that very early on in the certification materials, Rita outlined a process for success. And as a very important part of this, what was involved is to be able to go ahead and inspire people with an attitude that only success is possible. we're going to go into this process knowing that we cannot help but succeed if we put in the time and effort. And I thought that's wonderful. And I also thought, and this goes along a lot of how I work with clients in the executive coaching and the team building, and then also the training that I do, that the way that you inspire people, the way you help people develop this attitude where only success is possible, is by helping them reframe their thoughts, turning negative thoughts into positive statements, getting them to take a look at and change the way they talk to things about themselves, and of course using inspiring poems and inspiring stories, books, movies, music, anything that will help people reshape their thinking and take those negative thoughts that plague them and put them into positive statements. But one of the things that I have noticed in my own work over the last 15 years, working again with with executives, plus also employees and teams, is that it's really difficult to get people to reframe these negative thoughts into positive statements if they don't believe at some point that change really is possible, or if they would have what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset. So what I'd like to do for this next little while, folks, is talk to you a little bit about the concept of mindsets and differentiate the idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, because again, both these mindsets take us in some very different directions, and talk about also the behavioral implications of this, because whatever mindset that you have, whether you will, as you find yourself having a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, that does have a profound impact on the goals we set and how we approach challenges, how we deal with setbacks, how we react to criticism. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the behavioral implications, and then talk about how we can empower our financial social work clients with a growth mindset. Plus, as time allows, we'll entertain some questions and comments from the audience, as well as I'll also point you toward some additional resources. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk a little bit, first of all, about mindsets and what mindsets are. Now, as many of you are already aware, within psychology, a mindset is a collection of assumptions that one or more people have, or that one or more groups have. And the thing about these assumptions is that they do have a subtle but very profound impact on our behavior. One of the ways that I like to talk about it or think about it is that a mindset is a lot like the utility program that's running right now on your computer. All right, it's in the background, it's monitoring what's going on. You aren't really aware that it's functioning most of the time, but it's in the background, subtly impacting how the computer works. And this is how a mindset works. It's in the background, it's operating at the unconscious or the subconscious level, and it is subtly impacting what you choose to think about, how you choose to think about things, and how you choose to behave. Now, this concept of a fixed versus a growth mindset comes out of the work of Carol Dweck. Now, Carol Dweck is a researcher and author. Right now, she's at Stanford University. And for many years, her research interest was in the area of failure and how people cope with failure. She's trying to understand the processes by which people cope with failure. And so early on in her research, and a lot of her early research was done with children, but what would she do is she would get groups of children together, or she would work with them actually, I think, one-on-one, and she would present these children, and I think their ages were ranging anywhere from about 8, 9, 10, something like that. She would present them with a series of puzzles, and each puzzle was a little bit more difficult than the next. And so as she presented these puzzles, she would encourage the children to work through the puzzles and move on from one puzzle to the next, encouraging them to press forward and see how many puzzles that they could solve. And of course, as time went on, the puzzles got more complicated and more difficult. And as you might expect, that over time, the more it wasn't unusual for, as the puzzles became more difficult, for many of the children to just simply get frustrated and give up. However, she was startled when she realized or recognized actually how many children didn't give up, didn't become frustrated, didn't seem to see themselves as failures. In fact, in a lot of cases, or a surprising number of cases, they would find children who relished the fact that they were increasingly difficult, and they hung in there and they persisted and they got better doing the puzzles with time. And it wasn't as if they even thought of failing, because in their minds, they weren't failing, they were learning. And so out of that work, Dr. Dweck developed this concept of the fixed mindset and then the growth mindset. So from her aspect, or what she was looking at, what she described as a fixed mindset is, again, a set of assumptions about our abilities and our personal qualities. And according to Dr. Dweck, a fixed mindset assumes that our abilities and our potential, our personal qualities, are pretty much predetermined, essentially hardwired in us by our genetics. And those really cannot be significantly improved over time, right? And then she categorized the people who persisted and who seemed to be not concerned as much with failure, but more concerned with learning, as having a growth mindset. And a growth mindset assumes that really our abilities, our potential, our personal qualities are really ultimately unknowable and potentially unlimited. And that with time and effort and passion, one can significantly improve one's personal qualities or one's skills or one's abilities. Now, when we're saying this, these people aren't assuming, people with a growth mindset aren't assuming that everybody can be an Einstein, but that, and there is such a thing as talent. Some things do come easier for us than others, but that again, with effort and time and passion, one can make significant improvements in one's personal qualities and abilities. And the exciting thing about this, folks, is, especially coming from a standpoint of someone like myself, who's interested in helping people change and grow and reach their potential, and also I think for us as financial social work professionals, the exciting thing here is that whether one possesses a fixed mindset or a growth mindset does have a significant impact on people's potential for success. In fact, what seems to be coming out of the research is that people with a growth mindset seem to avoid pitfalls that people with a fixed mindset tend to fall into. And so what I'd like to do now is maybe talk about how this might pan out over a period of time as people are approaching challenges. So let's now talk a little bit about fixed mindsets, growth mindsets, and how this might impact behavior. And here's what we tend to see, or at least the researchers have tended to see. I can back this up in my own experience, that people who possess a fixed mindset, people who have this fundamental belief that somehow their abilities and their personal qualities are predetermined and they're only so smart or so intelligent or whatever the case may be, and who also believe that if you either have it or you don't, I guess that would be a nice way to summarize the fixed mindset. You either have it or you don't. And so for them, what tends to happen is that what motivates people with a fixed mindset is to demonstrate the competence that they naturally possess. Okay, so that's the goal here. As I go out into the world, I have a fixed mindset. I'm going out into the world. I want to show people that, yes, by golly, I've got it. I am competent, I'm smart, whatever the case may be. And so as they go out into the world and they have interactions with other people, as challenges come up, how they assess those challenges, how they think about those challenges and think about experiences, is they ask themselves, in this situation, did I succeed or did I fail? Did I succeed or did I fail? And if I succeeded, well, that's fantastic, because that just reinforces the fact that, you know what, I have what it takes. I'm just naturally good at this. I have what it takes. Now, the problem being, of course, is that we don't always succeed. And when people with a fixed mindset don't succeed, then what they tend to do is tell themselves, I'm a failure. It becomes about identity. I'm a failure. All right? And as such, as they start to see themselves and have the identity of a failure, they don't necessarily then, well, they don't tend to go out of the way to accept challenges. Once a person might have had one or two failures with a fixed mindset, then they seem a lot less likely to want to take on new challenges because, oh my gosh, now instead of this being an opportunity to show how smart I am or whatever the case may be, or how good with money I am, then now people tend to avoid challenges. So again, and that's because now every instance, every interaction with somebody, every challenge that comes up, it becomes a test I'm going to succeed or fail at. And I don't like to fail. And failure means that there's something wrong with me as a person. I don't have it. So they tend to avoid challenges. And then also something kind of interesting is how they also now approach effort. Because one of the implications of this, so as I said before, people with a fixed mindset tend to sometimes avoid challenges because they don't want to put their sense of themselves on the line. Okay? Now, this also has an impact when it comes to effort. Because for people with a fixed mindset, effort is for losers. Effort is for losers because if I really have it, if I'm just naturally this or that or the other thing, I shouldn't have to work at it. It should come easily to me. So for them, they tend not to, again, put in the effort they might need to improve. All right? Now, what then happens also, folks, is not only are they avoiding challenges, now are they not also feeling inclined to put in the effort to become better at what they're doing or to increase their, augment their abilities or strengthen their personal qualities, then also when criticism comes, and it will come, folks, because everybody's got an opinion, when criticism does come, people with a fixed mindset tend to react very defensively to it. They react defensively to it. They feel disinclined to listen to it, to accept it. They'll discount criticism, which then, folks, also means that when they see other people who do succeed, where they haven't, especially where they haven't, then very often they themselves are threatened by other people's success. So this is what happens. Now, at this point, here's what ultimately happens. It doesn't happen in every case with a fixed mindset, but this very often is what tends to happen, is that these people who are essentially just coasting on their natural ability, which they aren't putting in the effort to really develop, what tends to happen is that they plateau early in life, earlier in their careers. Very often they don't achieve their full potential, which again only turns around and reinforces their fixed mindset. So you can see, folks, that if we're dealing with someone in a financial social work situation, if they have a fixed mindset, they might not be willing at all to even entertain the idea that change is possible. All right? Now, let's take a second now and compare this with a growth mindset. Now, again, what the growth mindset basically says is that, yes, there's such a thing as talent, but with time, effort, and passion, I can improve my personal qualities. I can improve my competencies. So for them, it becomes a very different story. Instead of going out into the world with a desire to show that they are confident or competent, their desire is to become competent. All right? So when they're out in the world and they're interacting with other people and challenges arise, they're not judging it by did I succeed or did I fail. They're asking themselves, did I learn something? Did I learn something out of this? All right? And then, of course, when setbacks or failures do occur, instead of saying that I failed, they say, I didn't succeed or I failed this time. There's a subtle difference here. Instead of seeing themselves as a failure by saying, I am a failure, they're saying, I failed this time. They're seeing it as a very isolated incident, which once again, if they can learn from, they will succeed next time. So again, they don't see themselves as failures. And when it comes to effort, they believe, they know, again, from their own experience and also from their beliefs, that effort is what leads to mastery. Effort is not for losers. Effort is for winners. And they're willing then, because they believe that, to put in the time and the effort to sharpen their skills, learn from past mistakes. And so what happens when criticism then shows up, they tend to be much more open to it than people with a fixed mindset, right? When they encounter people who are successful, and maybe successful in ways that they aren't, instead of being threatened by it, they're inspired by it. And ultimately what happens to these people, again, not in every circumstances, but most of the time, is that people with a growth mindset experience increasing levels of success and happiness. And so once again, I think when I was looking at this stuff, it made sense to me that if we could somehow inspire in people a growth mindset, that could really pave the way for much greater and faster progress in the arena of becoming competent in terms of financial well-being. So there we go. That kind of lays out the differences between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Now, again, Rita, I think we're going to have a Q&A session later on, and we'll cover some of your questions that we're talking about there. But there are some questions often when I talk about mindsets that pop up. So let me kind of be a little proactive here and talk to you a little bit about some frequently asked questions that come up whenever I try to share this information with people about mindsets. And here they are. First of all, number one. All right. We've talked about this. I hear what you're saying. We've done a little bit of an assessment, and I have a fixed mindset. Does having a fixed mindset make me weird or abnormal or a loser? And the research says absolutely not. When it comes to the breakdown, about 40% of the general population seems to have a fixed mindset. About 20, so it's 40% for a fixed mindset. Another 40% tend to have a growth mindset. And about 20% don't seem to be having any kind of definable mindset in general. They just seem to bounce around just depending on which way the wind's blowing. So if you have a fixed mindset, no, you're not abnormal or weird. A lot of questions people also have, can I still be successful and have a fixed mindset? And the answer is, by golly, yes. You can have a fixed mindset and you can be successful. It's just going to be a lot longer, harder, and more stressful and unenjoyable process because you're going to tend to, not always, but you will tend to avoid challenge. You will not be open to criticism. You will beat yourself up about being a failure, and you won't put in the effort. That's what's likely to happen. So yeah, you can be successful. It's just going to be a lot harder and a lot less enjoyable. Next question. Does a growth mindset guarantee me success? No, it does not guarantee you success. It simply makes it a lot more likely, because you're going to be a lot more likely to engage in the kind of behaviors that lead to success. Planning, putting in the effort, being open to criticism, learning from the past. So again, it doesn't guarantee it. It's just going to make it a lot more likely. All right. Also, will a growth mindset protect me from pain and disappointment? And once again, the answer is no. What growth mindset will do for you, however, is, again, make it more likely that you will try again, that you will learn, that you won't take the pain or the disappointment personally. You won't let it impact your sense of yourself. And again, you're going to be more likely to move forward, try new things. And recently, Rita and I were talking, we were emailing back and forth, and she brought up a point about how this might impact relationships. So I just want to kind of drop something in here, because a growth mindset and also a fixed mindset have some ramifications also for our personal relationships, whether friendships or family relationships, or especially even romantic relationships. Because what tends to happen is that as we engage in relationships, and we learn to have longer lasting and more satisfying relationships, of course, there's going to be heartache, there's going to be pain, there's going to be rejection. And what Dr. Dweck notices is that when people are rejected in relationships, and those individuals with a fixed mindset have their hearts broken or find themselves rejected in social relationships, their first reaction seems to be to want to take revenge on the other person, the person who rejected them. While those who have a growth mindset tend to start looking forward to reconciliation and to forgiving, which I would imagine that one is a lot more positive than the other and more conducive to long-term growth and happiness. But again, maybe sometime, Rita, we can go ahead and maybe do another webinar and talk a little bit about its impact on relationships. But I thought I would just kind of drop that in there for you there.
Thanks.
Next frequently asked question. I've got a fixed mindset and I'm happy and successful. Thank you very much. How do you explain that? Well, well, I can explain that in this fashion, and that is people are pretty complicated. People are complicated. And really, folks, these fixed mindsets and growth mindsets aren't necessarily, how should I put it this way, they're not all-encompassing. It is not unusual for some of us to have fixed mindsets about certain aspects of ourselves and a growth mindset about others. I mean, I can have a fixed mindset that I'm not very good with computers, or I'm not good at math, but have a growth mindset about, you know what, I really enjoy presenting, and if I do more webinars, I can learn from them and get even better about it. So again, people are complicated, but generally speaking, we tend to have one or the other, and it does impact our behavior. So, last point, one of the last points, are you saying that if I fail, that I simply didn't try hard enough? And all right, I can understand where that's coming from, but no, there are a lot of things that go into success or failure. Certainly the fixed or a growth mindset has a big impact, but there's a lot of components that go into success. There's talent, there's hard work, there's luck, being in the right place at the right time, being born into a family that has a lot more money so that you can take more risks or hang in there and persist until you succeed. There's talent, there's hard work, there's courage, there's all kinds of things. What I'm going to argue, though, folks, is that, once again, success will come easier and more quickly if you can adopt a growth mindset, which brings me to the last question people have, and I often hear this most often from people with a fixed mindset. Well, I've got a fixed mindset. Can I change it? And I can say absolutely. You can change from a fixed mindset into a growth mindset. And what I'd like to do and talk a little bit about now in the time I've got left, if I may, is just talk about how this might play out during the financial social work process as you're working with your clients, and how you can help them. So first of all, let's talk about a little bit about a plan for creating a growth mindset in clients. Now, I'm going to talk for the most part about using the change process that Rita outlined in her introduction and where we might start to insert this. So in the initial contemplation phase, when you're working with clients and they're contemplating the potential for change, I think it's a great idea to introduce them to the construct of the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. Okay? Because again, a lot of times we're not even aware that we even have a fixed or growth mindset at all. So I think this is a great time as you're working with people in the contemplation phase of the process to introduce them to the construct of the growth mindset. And on page 2 of your handouts is a self-assessment with some instructions on how to understand the results that you could share with your clients and help them understand at this point, do they have a growth mindset or do they have a fixed mindset? Okay? So I think the contemplation phase is a great time because, again, so often in the contemplation phase, one of the ideas is change, a significant change in my personal qualities or my abilities or my outcome even possible? And I think this speaks to that, all right? I think also that you can take the time to clarify the advantages of growth mindset, the advantages it has in terms of your attitudes towards effort, how you approach challenge, how you deal with setbacks, how you react to criticism. You can teach people about these things. And one of the things I often like to do with the people I'm working with is during this contemplation phase, and we're working with it, is I ask for a commitment. When I'm coaching people, I'm fairly straightforward with them. A little bit, in fact, sometimes people say I'm a little bit too in your face, but I like to ask clients, how badly do you want to succeed? Are you willing to do this? Would you make a commitment to a growth mindset? And I think being direct with people, it's been pretty useful for me at any rate. Also, during the preparation phase, now this goes into how we start getting into the mechanics of the growth mindset and how you change from a fixed to a growth mindset. And again, using the techniques that have been outlined before here in the materials with the financial social work about getting the people to change the way they think about things by using reframing. And so one of the things I like to tell people to do is the first thing you need to do if you're going to have a growth mindset is you've got to start listening for your fixed mindset. Because again, mindsets, whether they're fixed or growth, whether you have a positive attitude or a negative attitude, attitudes, mindsets, they have to be maintained. And that happens through this inner dialogue that's constantly going through our heads. So the first thing I suggest we do is start teaching people to listen for their inner fixed mindset voice, particularly at key points when, for example, they start talking about when a challenge approaches, okay? As a challenge comes up, the fixed mindset voice is going to start saying to them things like, oh, you know what? Are you sure you can do this? I mean, maybe you really don't have the talent. I mean, what if you fail? I mean, if you fail, well, then you're a failure. And if you're a failure, well, then you're a failure. We'll hear those kinds of things, all right? So get people to listen for that. When they have a setback, then that inner voice is likely to say something along the lines that, you know what, you just failed, you're a failure, and you had this setback here, and you know what, you wouldn't have had this if you really had it. You wouldn't have had a setback if you really had the talent. You really have the talent. So, maybe it's time to kind of opt out here. Maybe it's a time to kind of back out gracefully and try to save your dignity. Your inner voice, that fixed mindset inner voice is going to say that. And especially when you are being criticized, that inner fixed mindset voice is going to get defensive. It's going to say, what does that person know talking about? It's none of their business. Who are they to tell me that I'm not good at something? I mean, look at their lives. All right. It's going to try to discount. So we need to teach people to start listening for that inner mindset voice, and then teach them to reply with the growth mindset inner voice. So that, for example, when a challenge comes up and the fixed mindset starts saying, well, I don't know, are you sure you can do it? I don't know, maybe you don't have the talent. And then your growth mindset voice will come back and say, well, no, I'm not sure I can do it now, but I'm pretty sure that with time and practice and a little effort, I can get better. So teach them to talk back with that. When the setbacks happen, and your inner mindset is starting to, and the inner mindset voices, fixed mindset voice is starting to say, oh, you're a failure. No, come back and say, no, I failed this time. Doesn't mean I'll fail next time. I failed this time. And besides, people who are good at things fail all the time. That's how you learn. That's how we grow. And then when criticism comes and that fixed mindset voice is starting to get defensive and doesn't want to take responsibility, no, teach your clients to say back to that fixed mindset voice, no, wait a minute. No, yeah, the criticism, it stings. I don't like to hear it. But if I don't accept responsibility for my actions, how am I going to get better? So I think I'm going to just suck it up and listen to it and see what I can learn from it. But those are the keys. Teach people to listen to the inner mindset voice, that fixed mindset voice. Teach them to reply. And I think a great way to do that could be some maybe written exercises where, and Rita has a lot of these in the materials, where, again, I think Journaling is great. Have a situation where you're on one page, you listen, you write down whatever your inner, that fixed mindset voice is telling you, and on the other page, start writing comebacks to it. Encourage people to, again, repeat those. Again, teach them to talk back to that inner mindset voice. All right? And then, finally, as you're counseling them, as you're coaching them, working one-on-one with them, that talk about what is that inner voice saying? What are you saying back to it? And then encourage them to take the growth mindset action. And that's a very specific thing. When a challenge comes up, grab onto it with both hands. When you have a setback, ask yourself, what am I learning from this? And when there is criticism, what is this person cares enough to tell me this? What am I going to learn from it? And I think, again, over time, this can help people, and I've seen this again in my own work, especially with executive clients, this can help people go from a fixed mindset into a growth mindset. Okay? Also, and here's something else that I think is important. As we're going along, and we're working with people and we are praising their efforts, I think it's very important that we praise not their natural ability, but we're going to be praising their progress. Because this is one way, folks, especially for those of you who have kids, one of the ways that children often will develop a fixed mindset is because we as their parents, their guardians, their teachers, their mentors, we praise their ability. Oh, you got an A on that test. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Gosh, you are so smart. And so we're teaching them. When we praise their qualities directly, that's enforcing a fixed mindset. Instead, if we can say, wow, you got an A on that paper, fantastic. I really appreciate how much effort you put in. You really dug in, you worked hard, you did well. So again, I think a great way to reinforce a growth mindset is to praise more in mind with the effort that people put in rather than their quote-unquote natural ability or their natural talent. Okay? So at this point, Rita, I guess at this point, if people have any questions, we can kind of play around with this and see what we can come up with.
David, first, go ahead and send it back to me.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
Please.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm learning how to. I'm learning how to turn it back over. So there we are. Okay. Are you sure you want to make it real? Oh, absolutely. Rita rock.
Okay.
There you go.
Thanks, David. That was
my pleasure.
That was great information, beautiful slides. We have a terrific audience who stayed with us the whole time. So I have some special news for our audience, but before I do my drum roll with the special news, I do want to mention that in January, on January 8th, actually, we will be launching online money support groups for women. And with this link that I have in the middle of the page, and which will be on the Q&A page if you want to try it then, if you go and to that link, you can sign up and receive a 20% discount for the January launch. Then I wanted to tell everyone it was really great that David tied in financial social work and our certification throughout his presentation. But for anyone who doesn't know the specifics, it is self-study, self-paced, and our students have 6 months to complete it and then 2 weeks to complete the final exam. It is practice. We're in every state, and we're in a bunch of other countries, Canada, Hong Kong, Australia, Iceland. But for my drum roll, every Thanksgiving, I get to feeling so thankful to be able to be part of people's professional lives and personal lives and helping them to take control of their money and gain control of the rest of their lives, because that's just how important money is. And so it is November. I am thankful. Thanksgiving is coming. So we are offering a $100 discount on the certification. And that code is FSW 100 for anyone that wants to take advantage of it. And the code will work through midnight, Sunday, November 18th. And now we are going to go to the Q&A. However, you can see at the top, we do have a handout. So you want to be sure to go over where it says handouts and download this really great handout that David made for us. So you can do that. And we will, meanwhile, open the question box and see the questions they have for you, David. Okay. Can a person have qualities of both? And how do we know which is dominant?
Well, okay, yes. Again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, people are complicated critters. And again, it's not unusual to have a growth mindset about certain aspects of ourselves and a fixed mindset about others. And so, yes, and how can we tell? Usually it's something along the line. You'll hear people say things like, well, I'm just not good at that, or I don't have a head for numbers, or I'm not really very technically oriented. People often will have that sense of themselves, and I think it's just as you're starting to talk to people, especially initially, as you're talking to people about their issues and the goals that they have for the coaching and what they want to get out of the process. And I think it's pretty easy. They'll mention things like that. Again, you also have in the handouts, you've got a little assessment that gives you a more global view of people and their general. As I said before, we often mix them up, but generally speaking, we tend to lean one or the other. The self-assessment that I have in the handout for you will give you a general idea. And you can also get it by paying attention to their behavior. How do they react to the specific challenges associated maybe with a specific domain? So perhaps if you're talking to people about putting together a spending and savings plan, and they seem to kind of hesitate about it, and they say, oh, well, I'm not really good at that sort of thing. So I think, yes, we often, all of us have aspects of them that are mixed up within us, and people will usually talk about their fixed mindsets in terms of specific kinds of domains, an activity, a quality. Oh, I'm really not that smart, or I'm not really that motivated. If that makes sense.
Great. Here's a question that I think is pretty interesting. How does our family of origin tie into these mindsets?
I think they have a huge influence.
Me too.
Here's the thing about this. While it's true that genetics does have an impact on talent, our potential, it does have an impact. So much of the fixed and growth mindsets have to do with what we're taught, especially how we observe our parents, what we observe in our parents. So much of the fixed mindsets are taught, and thank God, because what is taught or what has been learned can be unlearned, and that gives me a lot of hope.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm not sure how much I talk about that in the certification while you went through it, David, but I do believe that. I'm such a strong believer in the fact that what has been learned can be unlearned. But I thought that was an interesting question, and I immediately took me back to my childhood. Good, bad, or indifferent. So quite a few people have this question around how long does it take to change from one to the other?
Okay. Well, that's a very good question. Well, again, and I'm going to kind of draw on now my limited knowledge of cognitive behavioral therapy, but what we're really talking about in a lot of ways is changing people's habits and habits of thought. So when I teach growth mindset, what I tell people is, first of all, you need to come up with at least one or more little mantras or restatements. And so a simple one might be, I'm getting better at budgeting, for example, might be one of them. I'm getting better at budgeting my money. And so what I tell them is come up with a phrase and then find 10 opportunities to repeat your phrase 3 times. So let's say you're trying to change your behavior, trying to encourage yourself to be better at budgeting. So the phrase would be, I'm getting better at budgeting my money. Now you go ahead and you find 10 opportunities during the day, and opportunities are everywhere. So say you're walking into work. As you're walking into the work, I'm getting better at budgeting my money. I'm getting better at budgeting my money. I'm getting better at budgeting my money. While you're waiting for the elevator, I'm better at budgeting my money. I'm better at budgeting my money. You're waiting for the coffee pot to brew. Repeat it 3 times. You're standing by the copying machine. Repeat it 3 times. You're stuck at a red light. Repeat it 3 times. But find 10 opportunities to repeat your new mantra or phrase or statement 3 times. Then, whenever you catch that inner voice going, oh, I'm not really good at this, repeat back your mantra 3 times. Oh, gosh darn, this budget is driving me crazy. No, I'm getting better at budgeting. I'm getting better at budgeting. I'm getting better at budgeting. So catch yourself and correct yourself. And what the research tells us, folks, is that if you're willing to do that every day for about 21 straight days, you can literally rewire your brain. So to answer the short answer to the question is, with disciplined effort, you can change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset about any particular thing within 3 weeks.
There you have it. Here's an interesting question. How can we introduce a growth mindset into an organization that espouses a culture that is opposed to this mode of thinking?
Ah, yes. Okay. Well, that's a good question, because what tends to happen is that now we're talking in the area of culture, and so often culture, of course, reflects the values, the assumptions, the viewpoints, the mindsets of typically of the original founders, and they just get passed on like families from generation to generation. And so what I tell people, that if you want to introduce a growth mindset into your department or your team, that don't worry about the organization as a whole. Don't worry about that, because you really cannot control that. Instead, I tell people, create an island of excellence. An island of excellence. In other words, in our department, on our team, this is the way we're going to approach it. And what I find tends to happen, folks, is that, there's no company that's perfect. And so what you tend to find that better companies that actually make change, well, they tend to have more islands of excellence than others. So I would say, don't worry about the organization as a whole. Just to get together with your teammates and say, folks, this is the way we're going to operate. And if you can start operating in this way, you start seeing the benefits of a growth mindset, then other people are going to start paying attention. And once they start seeing the results, it's going to be easier for you over time to persuade maybe more teams, more departments. It does take time, but it's, again, early on, if you want to introduce this, don't worry about the organization as a whole. Make your own little island of excellence.
What a great answer, David. I would not have had that. That looks like all of our questions. If anybody has another question, you can quickly type it in. If not, I, for one, am going to thank David. I loved it. I loved the information. I'm so glad we were able to do this together, and I'd love to work with you again.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Isn't technology wonderful when it works and we can do things like this? It did.
Yes, Vonda, thank you so much again.
You're welcome, David.
And that's Vonda, and she's part of Financial Social Work, and we love her here. And look at this. Thank you for a great webinar, valuable information. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, well, everybody, have a beautiful, wonderful Thanksgiving. We will be doing some special as a gift. You are getting lots of thank yous. As a
Great.
gift guest from, as a thank you from Financial Social Work, we are doing, instead of a webinar in January, we are doing 3 free online support groups. You should be getting that email next week if you want to join us for those, everybody. And we will be back with a webinar in January and launching the Financial Social Work online money support groups. Thanks, everybody. Be well and take care. David, that somebody just said very thought provoking for clients and for me. Very well presented. Fantastic
Thank you.
information. Thanks, David. Have a great holiday. And by all means, let's work together again.
I think so. There's a lot more potential here. But anyway, I'm going to run now.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much for all your kindness.
Okay.
I really appreciate this opportunity. And Vonda, love you, darling.
Love you too, David. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Rita.
Bye. What a nice guy. All right. Okay. Stop.